Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sons and Daughters of Liberty. Give me a few minutes, a couple minutes while I share these links real quick. So, we all know what happened this weekend at Charlottesville. Today I want to discuss how did we get to this point. And there's many contributing factors. I've talked about it in various videos that I've done already. How that one day we end up getting to this point. But no one's seen, we just get these groups that they don't want to hear what anybody else is saying, because they think they're right and they're the only way to get things done is what they're doing. And even they're admitting there's infighting within their groups. I mean, they don't realize the big deception of it all, which is these groups are been infiltrated, created to cause this diversity, to cause clashes, to further divide people. And that's just on the ground level. I mean, what really brought this to the boiling point is the stuff I've been talking about. Stripping history, not teaching proper history in our schools, stripping the history of our country. Removing the monuments, part of our history, to lessons so we don't repeat that type of history. When you start doing that, you start offending people. And they want to speak out. I watched various different streams. I was having more than one window open, watching, different perspectives, different groups, the alt-right, the left, just watching and one feed that was just neutral, just there to record it. The stuff I've seen, it was plenty of blame to go all the way around. But what you guys are failing to realize, this is what they wanted to happen. They've been wanting this to happen. They keep pushing it. Why? Because eventually they're going to come and ban those types of speeches. Not allow us to rally. Not allow us to gather. That's what they want. And it all started a few months ago. Nobody really reported it on it. Nobody's talked really about it. New York labels Antifa as a domestic group. Domestic terrorist group. Now you're going to watch. It might not happen this time around, but it might. I mean, using a car, you got people throwing the word terrorist around. They're going to come and label the alt-right now as domestic terrorists. I mean, when you hold those rallies. It's like I told people, man, research some of the people that's in your group. Research them. Know what they're about. It was inevitable what was going to take place when you brought that rally there. Yes, you're calling for all the right to unite. In truth, you guys got so many differences. You guys can't get along amongst yourselves half the time. It that way. You've got people in your organizations. I pointed it out earlier last week and the week before. The research I did on a couple of them. They are not alt-right. Their ideology doesn't even back what most of you people consider the alt-right to be. But no, you can't tell people that. As soon as you do, they take offense. They don't want to listen. That's the problem. There is no common ground. Nobody can find common ground with even in these groups. You shouldn't be rallying and protesting if you can't unite with common ground. I'm all for not defacing and removing of our history. History has shown us who did that. Hitler and other dictator-type empires and stuff. They defaced history like that in the past. You guys are missing the point. And they're using this to divide us. They're using it to stir hatred, to push you towards a violent reaction. And like I said, there's plenty of blame to go around. Denying the alt-right their freedom of speech was a violation of their constitutional right. When that governor and mayor decided to do that, you set the match to a already volatile fuse. Then, what do you think was going to happen? Well, what happened is exactly what they wanted to happen. That's what you guys got to realize. They wanted this to happen. They want it to happen so they can come around and take our freedom of speech, start stripping away our rights. My hat's off to the militia in Virginia for showing that we can peacefully protest. We can carry firearms. They honored our Second Amendment right. And I know that pissed a lot of politicians off. My thing is, there's many steps and precautions that could have been taken, so this would have happened, but you did not do it. We've seen it all last year, banning signs and sticks and stuff from rallies. You could have defused the situation before it even got there. But the part I don't get, why'd you push them out one way, force them into the opposing side? It's already been released. There's documents of it. You could have let them out the south side and nothing would have happened. Nothing should have happened because you should have allowed them to peacefully protest. They peacefully had their rally. You let the protesters march in the streets. Even after the event, they weren't permitted to do that. They didn't have the permits. The federal court gave the permission to the alt-right to do this. Defending no one on this one. I'm the only thing I'm defending the fact they had the right to protest. They had the right to say what they wanted to. And you guys denied the issue in hoping that it would have caused an escalation. Wow. That dog's just been a pain in the day all day today. So what's led up to this? Well, we've had the boiling point from Berkeley, Seattle, all these protests that's going on. Tempers are flared. We've got movements like Black Lives Matter, Antifa. We get racism being thrown in. We got the defacing of monuments, taking them down, stripping our history. Instead of educating on the history. Educating and learning from it so we don't keep repeating the mistakes. They're using our history to force us to repeat the same mistakes we made way back then that we supposedly got over. You know, I blame that on the education system. The education is not teaching our history. They're not teaching things. Our young generations are learning from social media. Social media has become their educators. Because if they were properly educated about our history, why things happened in our history, it's the division we have. They're using that as a tool, as a weapon, to further divide us. And the fact is, you know, all of you need to get over it. Hate speech, even hate speech is protected by our Constitution. Get over it. You have the right to peacefully protest against it. Peacefully say what you want to say. But that's the problem. So many people are so easily offended. Oh, you offended me. Grow up. Quit acting like a child. You know, and the worst part of it is, it took an idiot using a car as a weapon. But you know what most of you probably don't know? Virginia actually has a law where if he plays his cards right, he might just walk. So all he's got to say, I was in fear of the crowd, and he has the right by Virginia law to run people over, move them out of the way with his vehicle. Betcha he did his research. Virginia's not the only state to have that law. There's been about 4 other states that passed that law just this year alone because of the protesting, the stuff we've seen that happen in Berkeley and stuff. You know, there's so many real issues out there. The real issue is we're divided. We need to stop being divided. We need to stop letting these idiots in power keep dividing us. You know, mainstream. Oh, the president needs to disavow this. No, the president said it right. All sides were to blame. Those that showed up there not to peacefully protest are to blame. There's, like I said, there's plenty of blame to go around, all the way up the ladder, from the protesters to the governor. And sadly, and I heard a couple of the right say, you know, we had nothing to do with those cops getting killed in the helicopter accident. Well, actually, yes, you did. The reality of it is you did. Because you forced that helicopter to be in the air. They were doing their jobs. There's nothing wrong. Nobody should be blamed for that. They were doing their jobs, but because of the escalation, the way things were handled, you chose to stay in the area instead of leave, when you could have fought it in the courts when they denied you your constitutional right. You decided to continue to march in the various areas Therefore, you kept that helicopter in the air for a long period of time. Regardless how it happened, it wouldn't have been in the air for that long period of time if the situations didn't unfold the way they did. But I think, with that said, even the governor's to blame on that because he helped cause the situation. But you can't, that's part of owning up to responsibilities. Yes, I agree. It should have been peaceful. It should have been done right. You guys shouldn't have been bottlenecked and pushed forward. But at the same point, there's plenty of video out there. And I actually hope they do thorough investigation, take all this video that's online, and justly arrest everyone that caused violence. For those that thought it was cool and fun to push up against the cops, you should be arrested for assaulting a police officer. That's not peaceful protest. That is violent protesting. And that's both sides. For those that decided thought it would be funny to beat people with sticks, you should be arrested and charged with assault. For the one that thought it was funny to interrupt a press speech, whether you agreed with him or agree with him, you should have been arrested and charged, not released. Since it was over the weekend, you should have had to wait till Monday for bail. And the cops should be ashamed of themselves for allowing somebody even to get close to that, to be able to swing on him. Many areas throughout Charlottesville, the system failed everybody. But at the same time, the alt-right should have known when they were doing that rally what they were going to draw. Maybe the answer is, from here on out, don't rely on the cops. Start hiring private security to protect your rallies. Because you have the right to do that. You have the right to speak, which, it was a shame because I was actually looking forward to hearing what some of these people had to say. I'm the first to admit I don't agree with everything that's said on any side. But I do support and respect the fact that you're protected by the Constitution. Even if you want to preach hate speech, you have that right. Just like I have the right, if I don't like it, to protest it peacefully. But the point is, it keeps getting to a boiling point. We get racism thrown in. We get defacing history, taking history away from things. That is a problem. We have one side always blaming the other. All they're doing is looking to cause division. That's it. They want you divided. Why? Because when you get so divided, when they get you to a boiling point, what happened at Charlottesville is what they want. They want that violence. They want that reaction. So they can come and start taking your freedoms away. Here's the sad part of it. Something, some of you guys think you might have lawsuits. Well, it depends on that state of emergency was declared. That state of emergency was declared before your rally took place. They're going to say it was a national security issue, and therefore they had every right to cancel the event. So when they did what they did, which is something I completely disagree with, because it violates our constitutional rights, being able to free to speak. But like I said, pay attention to what happens to that kid. He might just walk. all he's got to do. For defense, all he's got to do. I was afraid of the crowd. By the Virginia state law. He's entitled to that defense, and he's entitled to be found not guilty because of that defense. I'm quite sure he's not going to walk. He's going to be the fall guy. But if they do let him walk, imagine the chaos that's going to stir. Imagine that'd be like throwing kerosene on the fire. And truthfully, that is what they want. And now everybody, like I said, everybody let it slide when New York labeled Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. You don't think they're not going to try to do the same thing to the right? Which is, and the right, for the most part, up until this point, even at this point, they've been the peaceful ones. They don't go to places to start fights, unlike Antifa. You know, and it was shameful watching people taunt the police, saying F the police, right in front of the police. I mean, that's disrespectful. Like I said, there's plenty of blame to go around. Problem is, we're not dealing with finding the answers. Everybody gets answers and they don't want to hear it. Because if they accept those answers and realize that we need to find common ground, we need to unite as Americans, not left, right, alt, color. We need to unite as Americans. Start standing up to these politicians that keeps trying to divide us, keeps trying to push race ideology. For your groups out there, the alt-right, the alt-light, the left, start kicking these people out that are promoting these ideas from your groups. Because they're the ones that are adding fuel to the fire. They're the ones that are trying to keep division. You speak you want unity? Start removing these people from your groups. Putting them out there for what they are. Provocateurs. People that have infiltrated your group to cause division and chaos. You guys need to start doing it before it's too late. It may already be too late. They might just use Charlottesville as an example. You know, and I don't agree with what dude did one bit. Because you know what image is going to be in my head for the rest of my life when I think about this? That little girl on top of that hood as he ran them over. Yes, you've seen bodies flying, but you've seen that frightened little girl sitting on top of that hood. How she did not get injured was a miracle. But that's the image I'm going to take from Charlottesville for the rest of my life. An innocent, a child that doesn't even really probably understand what's going on. That's the image all of you guys should take from this. And think about it. What are we teaching our young kids? Are we teaching our young kids it's all right to remove statues that might represent a darker side of our history? Or are we going to use that statue as an example? This is what happened. This is why we're supposed to be Americans. We're not supposed to be divided by skin color, views, by social class. That's the message you should be telling our kids. Not that this statue is wrong, it needs removed. Because you ask any Union soldier, you read their documents, you read the history. Robert E. Lee was respected on both sides. He was considered the best general. And he was respected on both sides. So why would you want to remove his statue? Oh, it's offensive. Why are you offended? We've had the civil rights movement. You're an American. You're supposed to be treated equal. And we'll fight for the equality if we see you're not being treated equal. Because you're protected by our Constitution. There should be no discrepancy between color or ethnicity. You are a U.S. citizen. You're an American. Removing the statue is no different than what Hitler did on the book burning. He's removing history so he can teach his ideology of history. That's what they're doing. Doing it through subvertly infiltrating your groups and changing the ideology of your groups. Now, stop believing everything you hear on social media. Stop believing everything you hear on the mainstream media. Research it. Study history. Listen to all sides of it. Find the opposing side. Read it. Study it. Understand both sides. Then come to your own conclusion. But don't repeat history. And that's what they're forcing you to do. They're forcing you to repeat history. A very dark period of history that could be far worse if it happened today. And actually it would be almost 100 times greater today than it was back then, because back then we had primitive weapons. Imagine something like that today of age. No, it's not even a pretty thought. That's what they're forcing you guys and programming you guys to believe. You want to unite behind a cause? Unite behind America, because that's what you are, an American. Not alt-right, not alt-left, not liberal, not communist, not socialist, not nationalist, not libertarian. You're an American. You're not Republican or Democrat either. These are labels that are meant to divide, meant to cause hate. If there's any true hate speech, it's those labels. Because it's meant to hate, force you to hate the other side, oppose the other side. They want you to do that. They want you to react to the peaceful protest. They want you to react. Because when you react, then they can come and start taking your liberties and rights and freedoms away. They want you under their foot. They want you as slaves. And that's every color. Because in their eyes, you are beneath them. You shouldn't even be allowed to look upon them. So you want something to unite behind? unite behind being an American and what this country stood for back in the day, which was freeing ourselves from those types of oppressions, those types of ideologies. Don't keep falling victim to these labels with the same old ideologies, just called a different name. All these things is what led us to Charlottesville. And it's been boiling over and over and over with all these rallies getting heated. You know, but truthfully, we got to consider ourselves lucky it happened that it was only that, because it could have been far worse. That's why I stated earlier, my hat's off to those militia groups that were there and to those that were legally under the Second Amendment carrying. Not a single shot was fired. That's remarkable. That tells me the system hasn't won. But eventually it's going to end up happening. We don't need another shot heard around the world. We need to learn from our history. We need to start demanding that that history be retaught and taught again in our schools. We need to defend our national monuments. They represent a history that we don't want to repeat. That's the reason they stand there, so we look at it. No, we don't ever want to repeat that. You know, like I said, we can play the blame game all day. There's blame to go all the way around. But blaming somebody's not fixing the issue. It starts with waking people up to these people that's infiltrated these groups that want to cause this. Waking it up to that our politicians are forcing this. Our government, some of our state governments are forcing this. That all could have been prevented, but wasn't. It was allowed to happen. That's why I said, when you start seeing these things, research the people within them, people that's going to be speaking, what they're about. Are they about America? No, they're not. Some of them were. I got to rephrase that. Some of them were. Out of that list, I found 2 that weren't. 2 that's on the idea of dividing us even farther. There's nothing wrong with having a peaceful rally, especially a rally that's supposedly meant to tearing down a national monument, tearing down a part of our history. Now, that wasn't everyone's agenda for being there, unfortunately. But, you know, like I said, the sad part of it is, dude's got a chance to walk scot-free. And that's only going to add fuel to the fire. You know, as much as I hate to say this, I'd rather see him used as an scapegoat than actually be allowed to walk. But the law's there, and he can actually use that law and be protected by that law. Hi, Pam. You know, and I just caught on Twitter before I did this. Before I forget it again. Uh, Philadelphia freedom of speech rally. And their excuse is because of what took place in Charlottesville. See, now we're already starting to see some of the effects of this. They keep doing it. And it is one-sided. I give you guys that. Because they don't oppose when the other groups do it. They don't close them down, shut them down. And that needs to change too. We have, as Americans, we have every right to peacefully gather and protest. You know. But like I said, if you want to set an example, there's plenty of video footage all over YouTube on this. Arresting those caused violence. And in the next event, don't allow nobody to bring sticks or any type of thing that can be used as a weapon. No pepper spray. No nothing. We can't have this double standard either. You shut them down, but you allow another group that doesn't even have a permit to march. That's, like I said, that was just, you caused the situation. You know, of course, I'm not surprised. We all know who the governor of Virginia is. Everybody remember the shooting? Yes, they were. Not only were they told to stand down, they were told not to allow them to march them out on the south side, which should have been away from the protesters. By the very same person that wanted to make an example out of the shooting where our congressman got shot, wanted to make a bogus statement, 10 million people die a day from guns. Well, if that was the case, I said 3 days. It'd be actually less than 3 days. It'd be almost a day. Wouldn't be in America left. And, you know, just like I don't like how he taunted the militia either. I'm going to address this other issue. Well, those that keep telling Trump he needs to disavow these groups. No, he doesn't. He's not responsible for anybody who voted for him and their affiliations. Why? Because you're an American citizen. Who you choose to vote? Yes, he is a big Clinton insider. And that is referring to the governor of Virginia. He's not responsible for the actions of his voters. In his statement Saturday, there should have been no questioning what he said. He was right in what he said. Those that caused the violence on either side are to blame. Those that showed up there only to cause violence are to blame. Not their political views. It goes back to what I've been saying about labels. And you're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican, you're not a socialist, communist, you're not alt-right. All those labels are is what keeps dividing us as Americans. If you guys actually knew your history about the Democratic Party, you would actually find That's what used to be. It still is. If you actually look at the stuff they vote on, the racist party. History. Go look it up. Research it. But you know what all this distracts us from? Races in Michigan, California, state elections that are coming up. We all keep forgetting that these are happening. We got Muslims that are running for in these elections. I know the one in Michigan has been linked to various organizations. I mean, they flat out called him a felon. Communist Social Party, yeah. But, you know, that's part of history that's not talked about. Most people, yes, the younger generation, about McCarthyism, what happened with him, they wouldn't know. Just like most people aren't. But that's the thing. Everybody gets their information and they don't question it. Socialist Party, socialism, doesn't work. Look at Venezuela. I can point out several other countries that are fallen because of socialism. History has shown us every country that started out as socialist turns out to be communist or ran by dictatorships. This is why I'm against the removing of any type of history from education, whether it be monument. You know, somebody I watched somebody's podcast. I didn't agree with nothing what she said. I didn't because, but which is normally I agree with what she says. This time I didn't. But it's because people are getting fed up. They're tired. They're tired of seeing the chaos. They're tired of seeing the division. They're tired of seeing people get played. But you can't keep asking people to apologize for something their ancestors did. I'm not going to apologize for nothing my ancestors did. If you're offended, move. Get out of our country. Because that tells me you don't want to belong here to begin with. That tells me you have no respect for this country. You know, and a lot of things, it tells me you have no respect for our forefathers and the Constitution that they wrote up. You're quick to jump to it when you find yourself in trouble. But any other time, you're completely against it. You want to demolish the Second Amendment, or you want to push the boundaries of the freedom of speech. The Constitution is actually quite black and white, guys. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from what happened at Charlottesville. There's a lot of since obviously we didn't learn them from Berkeley and the other places where these rallies and protests happened. They keep getting spurred on by people that want The only thing they care about is watching us lose our rights, liberties, and freedoms. Many of them are paid to be there. Plenty of people's done the research. I've done the research. You guys need to start doing the research. Yeah. You know, I proved my point with Antifa. Where was Antifa during Bilderberg? Which, you know my opinions on Bilderberg, it's just smoke and mirrors anyway. But that's the very thing that they oppose. The only thing about Antifa, that's the thing they oppose. They weren't even to be found during Bilderberg. Now, that should tell you something. That should tell you who funds them, who pays them. You know, Black Lives Matter. Same thing, funded by some of these very same people. You know, caught a camera. There's a video floating around on YouTube where it, you know, young black kids standing in front of the police saying F the police, taunting the police. I mean, really. You know, but I also pointed out some of the people on the alt-right. Not going to name names, but I watched the streams, their names were mentioned, pushing up against the police, pushing back. That's called assault. Like I said, I hope that anybody that caused violence on all sides is rounded up and arrested and charged properly. You want to set a statement that you're not going to, that this violent stuff's going to, we're not going to be tolerated? We want you to be able to peaceful protest. Go around and arrest all the ones that hit people with sticks, pushed cops, and charge them appropriately. Then, for all those that was there to peacefully protest, who had your rights violated, go after them. Go after the governor or the mayor for violating your constitutional rights. Because you had the right to protest. And some could argue you had more right than the counter-protest because you were permitted to be there, and they weren't. But yet they were allowed to protest and march up and down the streets. Cannot be two-sided. The law applies to everyone. Just like our Constitution applies to every American citizen. You know, I would hope that some of the cops will stand up and voice their opinions over this matter. How they were put in harm's way. Oh yeah, our justice system's probably one of the most corrupt in the world, to be truthful. I mean, it's evident when you have Ninth District courts opposing our Supreme Court. A judge is supposed to be biased. He's supposed to have no political views or opinions. The judge is supposed to adhere to the law, the written law, not his opinion. My forefather actually stated this because he was a justice. A justice should only have an opinion after he has ruled on the case. No opinions, and his opinion should not affect his ruling on the case. To do so, you have ethically violated your oath you took for that office. That's why you see the Supreme Court, when they rule on a case, then they write their opinion. And you'll notice sometimes what they write as their opinion actually went against what they voted or ruled on. And they give their reason why they ruled on it, but they give their opinion of what they think or thought. You know. The other big thing is, like I said, a lot of this also will be spun and used as a division. Not only as to further divide us, but it's also going to be used to take us off what's really going on, stuff they don't want us to be paying attention to, focusing on. It's all about moves and counter moves. And they've got the upper hand as long as they can keep us divided. Why? Because when we're so divided as we are now, we can't agree on nothing. Half the stuff I said will piss every single group off, every label off, because I'm just pointing out the facts, and they don't want to hear it. Because somebody on their side they're listening to is telling them completely different. Think for yourself. You've got a brain. Use it. Don't let somebody else think for you. Yes, as above, so below. I mean, in this case, I think the ultimate goal is to strip us of our freedoms and rights. To put an end, I think the ultimate goal is to label the alt-right as a domestic terrorist organization. And now it can be easily done. That's why, I hated the fact to see that New York ruled Antifa. I mean, they are. What they were doing, I agree fully with the ruling. But now that law is in the books. There's a case now for that. Now they can take other groups and label you as such. That is what makes things like that a very thin line. I mean, for the most part, I completely agree labeling Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Why? Because of what they've done in every protest rally to this point. Near it. But, and that's what people don't get, once a case has been ruled on, it's in the books. So now a lawyer can quote that case from another state and use that as a reference to prove his point and opinion. That was the drawback and the danger of having the white supremacist group show up for the alt-right. They had a right to be there. I firmly believe that they were within their constitutional rights to be there. But because they were there now it opens that door. This is something you guys have to realize when you create these rallies, these events. The speakers you're going to have speaking, the crowd that they're going to draw. You're responsible for that when you organize these things. And I know a bunch of you don't want to hear that. Just like a bunch of you don't want to hear that you're actually, yes, you were responsible for those 2 cops dying in that helicopter crash. They were doing their job, but because things escalated, they were forced to be in the air longer than they would have normally done. Cause and effect, guys. You know, like I said, there's plenty of blame to go around on every level. Everyone had a part to play. You know what the worst part of it is? Almost every last one of you were tricked and deceived and forced into a situation that if you were actually did your research and you were thinking, it wouldn't have been that. Been no violence. In fact, it would have been a bigger gathering of people, more people united against a cause that shouldn't be taking place. The stripping away of our history, of what made America what it is, what reminds us not to repeat the past. You guys have fallen victim to these labels that are meant to divide, that keep dividing, keep building up on the hatred because of the different ideologies that are being taught that shouldn't be being taught in these groups. And you know who's laughing? The very ones that orchestrated all this, because they're starting to get what they want. Unfortunately, what they want is a little bit bigger than this. You keep hearing the word being thrown around all over the place. We've had senators throw it around. I'm not going to use it because history has shown us how bad it was the first time. Let's not make a second time, because the second time will be catastrophic. We don't have perimeter weapons anymore. Because what happens if the second time comes around, we're not only pitting families against each other, we're pitting uniform against uniform. We'll be causing a division where we don't want any more division within our police department, within our military. They want it. Nobody ever questions why some states allow the UN to have certain laws and regulations in our country. You guys should start doing some research on that and understand if something like what happened in the past had happened now and it causes in our police. See, it's the importance of also knowing your history, knowing what's going on in other states. You know, and understanding that there's always something behind the scenes that is going on that they don't want you to know about. And they'll throw distractions out there. I mean, there's many contributing factors that led us up to this. Because it's just been boiling over and over. You know, I wasn't the first one to say it. There's many people that said it. We all knew eventually something like this was going to happen. Actually, most of us thought it was going to be a little bit worse than what it was. Not trying to demean the situation. That what happened was bad enough. But it could have been far worse. And that's what they want. Yes, Pam, you're very right. The ultimate goal is martial law. That's why I am actually kind of curious. I'm still researching it. Kind of curious when they actually declared a state of emergency in Virginia. Was it before the protest was supposed to take place? You know, they have a chance to actually get screwed on for those that want to go after the state for violating their constitutional right. If martial law or state of emergency was just pretty much the same thing, was declared, then you actually lost your constitutional rights. But like I said, who lost big on this one? The alt-right. Why? Well, the freedom of speech rally in Boston was canceled. And many of the people that was going to be at this rally were supposed to attend and speak in Philadelphia. So they actually found a way to prevent your free speech. Because now if you show up there and try to hold an event, they'll call it unlawful. And I don't agree with that either. I mean, we can keep going down this road. You're not going to like the outcome of this path. You can keep holding on to these labels. Keep letting them anger you and push you towards hatred. And keep letting them divide you, but you're not going to like the end result. Even with their permit, yeah. No, if you got a permit, you're safe. But I don't agree with you should have to have a permit either. That's your constitutional right to be able to gather peacefully and protest. You shouldn't have to have a permit. Yeah, Philly. It was called the Philadelphia Free Speech Rally. Actually, I think I got a picture of it. Let me see if I can't find it. Boston Free Speech Rally, my bad. Yeah, Boston Free Speech Rally. Yeah, I just found out before I went live, when it was happening on Twitter, and Joe Biggs had announced, because he was supposed to speak there, and he announced he's still going to speak there. He's still going because of what happened in Charlottesville. The governor and mayor decided to cancel the event, basically. So it means they had a permit, so they took their permit, which it still might happen. For those, I mean, I doubt it though. They're going to use Charlotte as a reason to cancel anything like this for probably the next couple months. But who knows? The federal court might do like they did and rule that you can't, that they have the right to be there, which they do. So, I mean, that's what people don't understand. The governor and mayor had revoked the alt-right's Unite the Right rally, and a federal court Thursday, or was it either Thursday or Friday, had ruled against the state and told them they had reinstated their permit, so they're protected under the First Amendment. So I mean, their rights did get violated. I'm not even arguing that point with no one. Their rights did get violated. How the court plays it out, like I said, they can use national security issues, and which can trump your constitutional rights. It's just like martial law. Martial law goes into effect, you have no constitutional right. You know, just like actually a lot of people don't know. You guys can actually do the research on this. If you live like 100 miles, it might be a little bit more than 100 miles from the border, technically you live in a state in that border that you don't even have constitutional rights. They can deny you your constitutional rights because you're close to the border. I've done a little research into it. It's only for immigration type stuff. But the wording of the law, it could be argued on the fact that it could actually suppress your constitutional rights. The ACLU made a couple cases about illegal search and seizure on that. Yeah, I think it's 100 miles. My friend keeps wanting me to do a video on that one. I'm still researching it, still reading up on some of the case laws that I've actually found on it. So I have more than one source other than ACLU. But most people don't even know that. They were the first ones to point it out. I'll try to do that in a couple of weeks. I'm still, like I said, still researching, still trying to find other people that's brought it up. That way I've got more than one source. And preferably my sources, I'd rather be right straight from the law book on that matter. And that's something else you guys need to understand. Laws are a two-edged sword. Because like I said, when you argue a court case, it is your interpretation of the law and how you sell that interpretation to the jury. If you can make the jury believe your interpretation of that law, you can win your case. Or you can lose your case if the prosecuting attorney can make the jury, and it's manipulating the jury, to believe your interpretation of the law. Instead of making the laws black and white for what they say, common sense, they'll manipulate the words. It's a word game. and they try to change people's view of how. That's why I said this case in Virginia with dude doing that with that car. There's a state law that kind of can protect him. That's why I made the comment, dude, I kind of hope dude they use him as an scapegoat, because if they would find him not guilty because of that law, all that's going to do is infuriate people. And that's wrong. Even thinking like that's wrong, because he's entitled to do justice and he's entitled to be protected by those laws. That's one of those things that, when you create certain laws like that, why was it created? I mean, the excuse was because of medical people or somebody that's fear that they're going to get pulled out of their vehicle, to give them protection. Because I tell you what, here in Ohio, we have the castle law. Well, for most people say, well, the castle law only applies to your house and your property. Oh, no, it goes one step farther than here in Ohio. Our castle law extends to our vehicle. That's why you don't hear of too many carjackings in Ohio, because the law I was talking about, Virginia has a law that states if you are in fear while in your car of being attacked by like protesters and stuff, you have the right to run them over. I don't know when they passed that law. I know a lot of states started passing it after Berkeley. I know North Dakota passed it this year. You have the right to run protesters over. Actually, let me go find it real quick. It won't be hard. That way I can actually quote the actual law here real quick. The worst part of it was that kid that did this only lived 45 minutes from me. 45 minutes to an hour. Actually, probably 45 minutes. Mommy's closer than Toledo. Under Virginia law, if one is in a car and has reasonable fear of grave bodily harm, lethal force may be justified, and there is no duty to retreat. It's going to be hard to argue that. because there's enough camera evidence that can be gathered that shows otherwise, but he could state it happened up the road where the cameras didn't catch it. I just, yeah, basically it's going to depend how good a lawyer he's got, because he could state it happened 2 blocks up. Because the only evidence I've seen that could actually, and that's might be where he tries to pull it, is why he left the scene. He might be able to fight leaving the scene, because people did swarm the car and did start swinging it with the bats at the car. But as far as any video evidence of him, because to me, I mean, some of the videos, it sounded like he actually accelerated. What part are you confused about? Because I made you confused, I might have made other people confused. I might even confuse myself. Oh, if you're confused why I brought it up, oh no, that part wouldn't make sense either, but that's when people create laws like that, they open the door for things like that. Common sense would say he did it on purpose, but that's for a court to decide. And they're going to, if he goes through a jury, he's going to play hell getting any jury. Because like I said, most people, I think, they're going to take from what they've seen there, they're going to take in their heads is that little girl sitting on top of that hood when he rammed that car. But he's also charged with multiple accounts. Now, some of those accounts, the people that he backed over, that law to actually get away with injuring them. Because then, once they took the bats to his car, then he would have had the right to use that law. As far as what he did in plowing in, he's responsible for those he injured in the initial part. I was just pointing out the fact, though, that he could say that 2 blocks down the road where nobody's got any video that they had attacked him or tried to, which, come on, he had an all blacked out window. By the way, his front bumper didn't have a license plate. He's from Ohio. Ohio, it's mandatory that you have a license plate on the front bumper. which would tell me that he had intentions to do something, because he would have had to remove the front plate from the bumper. Because you will get pulled over in Ohio if you don't have a front plate. And if they can prove that, they can say that was intent, then he couldn't use that law to actually get away with it. Which I'm sure a prosecutor attorney would be the first thing they'll point out. Yeah, the whole thing was fishy to me. The fact is that they allowed, there wasn't even cops around that area. And then there's video now. They were just slowly going by, police, with the front bumper hanging from his car. He just drove right by, police on the sidewalk. No, it wasn't CGI. I don't know if you're hip to Revolutionary Z. Revolutionary Z was standing right there, live streaming, right when it happened. I was watching it on Facebook. It definitely wasn't CGI'd. And I know I've been following Revolutionary Z for a very long time. Yeah, there was lots of shootings. Well, they said over 20 people were injured. I mean, I watched a couple videos of a couple of the people that were live streaming had just walked right by the front of that car, right just before he plowed into it. That's something else I better state. I am in no means defending what he did. What he did, he should be locked up for the rest of his life. Which I think, if you listen to most of this podcast, you quite understand. Was it 30? Is it 35? Last I heard was 20 plus, with one fatality. You know, I've made my points good and clear. Anyone that caused violence should be arrested. There's plenty of camera footage, plenty of video footage out there. You've got their faces. They all should be arrested. And that even goes for that certain group in the alt-right that was pushing up against the cops, pushing up against their shields. That's called assault. But, you know, I've also listened to a bunch of podcasts in the last couple of days where a bunch of these guys, they wanted to be arrested so they could file lawsuits. You know, See, that's the problem. That goes against anything. That goes against what you were there for. If you were there wanting to be arrested, then that's diminishing and demeaning the groups that you represent. In fact, certain judges lawyers would hear lawsuits for violating their constitutional right. They think of it this way: if we can get arrested since they denied us our we can sue them for violating our constitutional rights, for peaceful protests, for being there with a permit to actually rally. And this is a couple of people that's went on podcasts have actually said this. I tried to get arrested. It's like, are you dumb? Even by saying that publicly, you actually hurt people that have a legitimate lawsuit, because people do have a legitimate lawsuit for their freedom of speech being violated. But now, that's what people don't get. When you do dumb stuff like that, you hurt the legitimate people that actually have a legitimate lawsuit. I mean, if that was your intentions, don't come out and publicly say it. Keep it to yourself. Because now, by publicly saying it, you actually just hurt people that actually have the right to actually sue the state for stripping them their constitutional right. Because now people are going to, hopefully nobody will hear those podcasts, and hopefully the people that did those podcasts with these people are smart enough to take it down. Which the person I actually heard, and I heard that today on a live podcast from Spreaker. I'm not going to won't name drop, but I have privately messaged the person like, hey, this could actually hurt the people's causes because dude said that. But I don't look for him to take the videos down. Not that it matters. It's already on the net. Somebody's already downloaded it, so. That's what people don't get. Everybody cries about the censorship, but they forget. Once you put it up it's always on the net. Because within that 5-10 minute period of time that was up, somebody downloaded it. Is going to re-upload it or clip it and use that clip. It's like, yeah, the stupidity of people. Sometimes they don't realize that they actually hurt their causes. Oh yeah, you best believe they My Hangouts crashed. I was hoping they had that issue fixed. Well, it's been a while since I've had that happen. It was definitely on the other end because I monitor my connections. I didn't get disconnected from the internet. Sadly, it's the truth that nobody wants to hear, though. I can't say that. My videos are actually now starting to get more views. That's a good thing too, because it's like I've pointed out. The more followers you have, when you get bigger, the more likely it is for your stuff to get censored. No, they can't. Not at all. They hate the very idea of us talking about these things. But there's a reason why I bring up these things. Especially why I brought up the fact that Virginia has that law to make other people aware. To also, make people aware, there's bigger issues here in the United States that's going on. And when we start arguing amongst ourselves, fighting amongst ourselves, we lose focus on the important issues. We become divided, and we find it harder to find common ground. It used to be I could find common ground with any of these groups out there. Now, not even a little bit. Because that's the thing, without common ground, we can't start healing these divisions. We can't find ways to put our differences aside to actually stand up for the important things. I mean, to me, what's important? We need our history being taught in our schools the way it's supposed to be taught. We need to stop the removing of our history. We need to stop allowing certain groups to cause divisions. Just like San Diego, California, the school board, they're still arguing back and forth about Sharia law being taught in the school. They tried to slide it in as a bullying cause to educate the students of that school about Sharia law. In what mindset was that even okay? One, every state, church and state is supposed to be separate. That's why we're not allowed any form of religion to be taught in our schools. Sharia law is a religion. It's part of a religion. It has no place in our schools. But if you want it in our schools, then you best allow Christianity in our schools, Mormonism in our schools, every other religion out there in our schools. You want to teach it. You can teach the history of culture, but the part that even made matters worse was the fact in the San Diego school, our government has even labeled the CARE organization as a terrorist organization. And CARE was sponsoring this school and bringing people in to teach the kids. But a lot of that got blown over, hid, and not talked about because of what happened. Oh, Berkeley happened. So the coverage was all about Berkeley and not about the school in San Diego that was allowing Sharia law to be taught in our school. Like I said, smoke and mirrors distract you from something that's very important happening. It's like I said, it goes back to what I was discussing in the last video about assimilation. They expect us to assimilate to their views and change our ideologies, our beliefs. They're basically saying our Constitution rights don't exist under their belief system and that our belief system is wrong. Well, in that case, you have no business even being here in the United States. We don't want you. If you can't adhere to our laws of this land, you don't belong here. But yet, we're starting to see them running for offices in Michigan, California, state offices, governors. No. But yet we're too distracted, or we talk about it or name them, then we put ourselves in trouble for talking about a group. But it's all right to talk about any other group. Yeah, that's actually big out there too. See, but it goes back to what I was saying. And it started with the alt-right, make men great again. Then it got somehow, they took that slogan, infiltrated it, and turned it into a racist thing, racism. To where, you're trying to saying that white men, no, it was all men. When that group came out, it was talking about all men. We need men to be pillars of our community. We don't need transgenders or sissies. We need strong men again. But a certain group decided let's throw racism and make it a white thing. Cues into it and blame ethnicity. When IQs is all, you want higher IQs? Better your education system. Start having vocational schools again. I don't know how many vocational schools have lost funding and just closed up to where schools don't offer vocational programming anymore. All those trade skills help raise your IQ. All of the book learning help raise your IQs. It doesn't have anything to do with ethnicity. But when we start putting labels on ourselves and these labels get infiltrated, the ideology, the philosophies change. So it's no longer about making men great again. It's about making white men great again. And I don't blame anybody for that. Like I said, the blame is our government. They've set it up and set the system up so where both parents have to work, sometimes 2 jobs, so they're no longer the role models to their kids. Pam, you pointed out, social media has become their babysitters. Their iPads, their iPhones, their computers are their babysitters now. But the thing is, it's happening to everybody here in America. And it's not one ethnicity. It's happening to everyone. It goes back to what I said about the caste system. The middle class has been cut in half. It's now and the poor class has increased. They find ways to cause division. The kids' first role model out of the household. Then our kids are being educated by what they see on social media and social platforms. They're being educated by groups instead of the parents. So when they're told and taught, respect your elders, listen to your elders, they do. Unfortunately, what they're being taught now is all these ideologies that are meant to divide, meant to keep us down, oppressed. So when somebody with an opposing view or opposing ideology to them, they're instantly offended, triggered. Oh, you're lying. That's not true. I wasn't taught that. This is what I was taught. Well, guess what? You were taught wrong. And that's what Common Core has done for us. All Common Core has done is it's just another form of book burning, removing parts of history that is important so we don't repeat the mistakes. So we learn from them. So we understand our rights, our freedoms, our liberties. We understand what powers our government has in each of their branches. I remember you couldn't even go to the past to junior high unless you knew your history. And your 2 years before junior high was nothing but history. State history, government history, and history. You had to know all those things. You had to know each branch of your government, how it worked. You had to know what happened in the Revolutionary War, Civil War. It wasn't looked on as a bad thing. It was looked on as a teaching experience so we didn't repeat those things. Why our freedoms matter. I was taught the Constitution when I went to school. I knew my Constitution before I even entered junior high. Knew my rights, my liberties. I knew what the Bill of Rights were. Ask any of our young generation those things today. Only a fraction of them will know the answer. And it's because they went and researched it for themselves. because they weren't taught that in the school. That's why we're seeing the things that we're seeing happening today. These are the things that have led us up to this point. Now, it's on us to decide, how far does this go? Does it go till we have to repeat history again? And that's what they're pushing for. That's what they want us to do. They want us to repeat history. All of the ugly things that they've stripped out of the history books, that's what they want you to repeat. Since they're no longer there to teach you. Pam brought up, yeah. She's like, oh my God, I was reading a book with a second grader I babysat, and a few of the words in the book were liar, fat, stupid, etc. What's with that? I told his mom. Yeah. I bet his mom didn't even know that was in the book. That's the problem. How is that appropriate reading for any child of any age? I remember growing up, the books I read, you wouldn't even see those words in it. You might see liar. As a reference as somebody lying as a bad thing. They teach you not to be a liar. But you wouldn't see anything. I mean, yeah, it's... And you know, but that's the problem. So many parents got to work so many hours. They don't catch these things. They don't, we don't got time to see what our kids are reading. And, sadly, we have to start making that time. Because when we find this stuff, we need to start holding our school accountable, going to the school board. What is this? Why are you teaching this to my kids? This is not what our kids should be reading. That's when you should be coming together as a community. Like I said, there's good causes out there that need to be fixed and changed, that we need people supporting. These are the things that they want you distracted from, not paying attention to. Because these are the things that, I hope you guys understand this. A child is the most susceptible to programming when they are young. You're supposed to be the role models. They're supposed to be learning from you. Instead, they're learning from these books. They're learning from other people that are teaching your kids completely something different than what you were taught. When your kids turn 18, they should have the proper tools. They should have the proper role models. Because then they're not going to make all these mistakes that we see these young kids making. I mean, don't get me wrong. I made a bunch of mistakes, and I had great role models. I just didn't listen. I was stubborn. It was my way. And that was the wrong mentality. Trust me. It led to a very dark road. Because you know what? I wasn't know-it-all then. I didn't even have a chance to experience life. I was living it, but not experiencing it. I wasn't taking time to smell the roses. Until you've got a chance to experience life, and that's what a lot of you young generations, that's what you're supposed to be doing now, experiencing it. Really? Wow. Fifth graders, Pamela said it, the fifth grader I babysat book report was on Minecraft. What's with that? No doubt. I mean, I'm a gamer, guys. I haven't gamed in a couple of years, but I was a gamer. Trust me, parents out there, you should be paying attention on those gaming platforms. The stuff that's said in the chat, the people they interact with. Minecraft is just as can be just as dangerous as being on any adult social network. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all for gaming because it does teach hand-eye coordination. It teaches you to think, but at the proper age. Actually, I know a bunch of states that's banned those books from reading. The Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer books, a couple other ones because they teach racism, is what they said. So they banned them from the schools. I mean, when I grew up, that was mandatory reading. They were considered classic literature. For Whom the Bell Tolls. Catcher in the Rye. A bunch of those books. And I've seen a few streamers do. Yeah, really. They've banned them, but here, read 50 Shades of Grey as required reading. See, that's what I talked about. You want to fix some of these issues? It starts with our education system. I mean, honestly, and I know people into that community. They'll tell you there should be laws in place that no one under 21 should be allowed to even experience, practice, or do anything in from those things. So why are you letting our high schoolers in junior high require reading of 50 Shades of Grey? Well, we got some great classics. You know, it goes back to, see, even talking about books, the books that they've banned from reading. I mean, who did that in history? Oh, that's right, Hitler. Why are we repeating? Why is this Hitler ideology all of a sudden so popular again? And most of you guys don't even realize, I don't think most of them even realize they're using that rhetoric, using that ideology. Hey, Be Rich. Because that's the very ideology that they're teaching. I mean, I pointed it out with Invictus Augustus, or Augustus Invictus. I mean, he wrote a paper on eugenics. And you know what that cost me for pointing that out? 15 followers on Twitter, pointing out that fact. Even linking them to the document that he actually wrote. Why? Because he was supposed to speak at the alt-right Unite the Right. And he was supposed to speak at Boston free speech rally, which as of right now I guess is canceled. But that's it's the problem with the world today. It's our younger generation and you can't blame them. The blame's actually on our government. It's on our state. It's on Common Core for stripping this history. pushing the race card again. You know, I actually thought we'd have got over that when when the civil rights movement finally got something that most of us actually thought probably would never happen. A black man as president. That was a historical movement that should have been showed that we've got past the racism. But instead, it just fueled the fire. And now we know why. Because certain parts of history was removed. Of course, you know, and certain things have been said, you know, and he pushed racism when it shouldn't have been pushed. It should have been a non-point. It should have been a crowning achievement that we finally got past racism. But like I said, there's plenty of good causes out there that we should be uniting, truly uniting as Americans and demanding that things would be changed. You know, we've got history right before our eyes right now. These last few generations that's come up. Listen to them. Listen to what they're talking about. Understand, and you can see the history that they weren't taught. You can see how you as parents have been taking away from them from being their role models, and it's not your fault. Never will I blame you. We start standing up for those things, and we can make some change. We can avert this little slippery slope we're on that's heading for a second repeat of history. But it goes back to what everybody says. Well, how do you find common ground? The most important thing is living and leading by example. If we can find common ground amongst our communities, amongst ourselves as the older generations, and start pointing these things out, that's what they don't want. Prime example is why we keep seeing this violence in these rallies at Charlottesville, Berkeley, Seattle. They don't want us to be able to come together as a community. They don't want us to even think about protesting. So they can shut the rallies and the protesters down. They can shut the communities down from gathering and addressing these issues, addressing the younger people. You know, it's like B. Rich is probably gone, but like B. Rich, he had something going. I'm pretty sure it's still going on. A get together of like-minded people, a community event. You know, more. We need more of that, to where we can address these ideologies, these things amongst people, in the public. It all starts with little movements like that. I can't remember what it's called, Summer Bash. Great idea. Need more of that. We don't need these huge rallies and protests, especially when we're so divided. We need to start addressing these issues and bringing light to the problems. maybe then we can start finding some solutions, some answers, a way forward. But by doing these things successfully, we're starting to lead by example. We're starting to become the role models that they've tried to take away from us. Talk to you later, Pam. Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up anyway. As again, I meant to only be on here for a little bit, and yeah, managed to ramble on for about 2 hours. I know I've given you guys a lot to think about, but I am going to get off here. Like I said, we don't need the blame game. There's plenty of blame to go around. We need solutions. We need solutions to real problems and real answers. And by blaming each other, it ain't going to get us nowhere. In fact, that's what they want us to do, further divide us. So think about some of the things I said. I'll try to, next video, keep it under an hour. But I'll talk to you guys later.